Picture this. You're drowning in student debt, your bakery dreams are crumbling faster than day-old croissants, and then you see it, a casting call for a reality dating show offering $250,000. The catch? You have to date a werewolf on live television for 90 days. What they don't tell you in the fine print nobody reads, is that once you step through those doors, once that biometric cuff clicks around your wrist, you can't leave. Not until the contract is complete. Not until the wolf decides he's done with you. This is the story of Rosie Lane, a 25-year-old baker who thought she was signing up for easy money and maybe some Instagram followers. Instead, she found herself trapped in a glass cage with the most dangerous predator reality TV has ever seen. And the worst part? He can smell her fear. He can hear her heartbeat. And he's been waiting his entire life for someone who smells like home. Welcome to Iron Ridge Pack territory. Welcome to the most twisted love story ever broadcast. This is 90-Day Wolf Lease. ACT 1, The Bait. Our story begins 3 months before the cameras rolled, in a cramped studio apartment in Portland, Oregon. Rosie Lane had exactly $47 in her checking account, a business degree she wasn't using, and a sourdough starter named Herbert that was probably worth more than her car. She'd been running Sweet Escape Bakery, if you could call a farmer's market stall a bakery, for 2 years, and the numbers didn't lie. She was failing. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. The casting call email arrived on Wednesday. 90-Day Wolf Lease, America's first supernatural dating experience. Grand prize $250,000 and the title of Alpha's chosen. Filming begins immediately. All contestants must pass medical screening and sign comprehensive contract. Most people would have deleted that email. Rosie wasn't most people. She'd grown up in the Pacific Northwest, where shifter communities weren't hidden. They were integrated, protected, and absolutely off limits to humans like her. Dating a werewolf wasn't just taboo, it was practically impossible. The cultural barriers alone were insurmountable. But $250,000? That was bakery money, dream money, freedom money. So at 2 a.m., fueled by desperation in Herbert's latest batch of bread, Rosie filled out the application. Name: Rosie Lane. Age: 25. Occupation: baker, entrepreneur relationship. Status: single. Why do you want to date a werewolf? I don't. I want the money. She hit submit before she could change her mind. What Rosie didn't know, what none of the applicants knew, was that this wasn't just another reality show. The Iron Ridge Pack Council had issued an ultimatum to their alpha. Prove you can control the beast, or we'll find someone who can. Alpha Lucien Voss was 29 years old and hadn't shifted in 3 years. Not since the incident that left 3 pack members hospitalized and his wolf reputation in ruins. The council called it anger management issues. Lucien called it survival. See, Lucien's wolf wasn't just aggressive, it was territorial, possessive, and absolutely convinced that the right mate would fix everything wrong with their fractured soul. The council's solution? Put him on television with 10 human women. Let the world watch him choose, and pray the cameras kept the beast in check. They called it 90-Day Wolf Lease because leasing implies temporary ownership. What they didn't advertise was the no escape clause buried on page 47 of the contract. Rosie skimmed it. Everyone skimmed it. Contestants agreed to remain within pack territory for the duration of filming. Biometric monitoring devices will ensure participant safety and contract compliance. Early departure permitted only under medical emergency or mutual mating acceptance. Mutual mating acceptance. Such clinical language for a life sentence. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the phone call that changed everything. Rosie Lane? This is Miranda Cross from Lunar Productions. Congratulations. You've been selected as a contestant for 90-Day Wolf Lease. Can you be in Montana tomorrow? Tomorrow. Not next week, not next month. Tomorrow. Yes, what do I need to bring? Just yourself, honey. Everything else is provided. Oh, and Rosie, don't Google the Alpha. We want authentic reactions. Of course, the first thing Rosie did was Google the Alpha. Lucien Voss, Alpha of the Iron Ridge Pack. heir to a multi-million-dollar security empire, and according to Shifter Weekly, the most eligible bachelor in supernatural America. The photos showed a man who looked carved from granite, sharp jawline, piercing golden eyes, and the kind of controlled stillness that suggested violence was always an option. But it was the interview clips that made Rosie's stomach flip. His voice was whiskey rough, his answers clipped and precise, and there was something in his eyes that looked hungry, desperate even. "What are you looking for in a mate?" the interviewer had asked. "Someone who isn't afraid of monsters," Lucien had replied, his gaze fixed directly on the camera. "Someone who can handle the real me, not the version I show the world." Rosie slammed her laptop shut. What the hell had she gotten herself into? The flight to Montana was a blur of anxiety and second-guessing. The other contestants were exactly what she'd expected. Instagram models, aspiring actresses, and women who looked like they belonged in a supernatural romance novel. Rosie, in her thrift store cardigan and sensible shoes, felt like a fraud. That feeling intensified when they reached Iron Ridge territory. The pack lands were beautiful in the way only untouched wilderness could be. Rolling mountains, dense forests, and a massive volcanic caldera that housed the most stunning glass villa Rosie had ever seen. It looked like something from a sci-fi movie, all curved walls and impossible angles, designed to be both luxurious and completely inescapable. The production crew was already buzzing around like caffeinated ants, setting up cameras and checking lighting. This wasn't some low-budget reality show. This was a full-scale production with more equipment than most Hollywood movies. "Ladies, welcome to your home for the next 90 days, announced Miranda Cross, the show's producer. She was exactly the kind of sharp-dressed, sharp-tongued woman who made Rosie feel like she was still in high school. "Before we begin filming, you'll need to put on your monitoring devices." The monitoring devices were sleek silver cuffs that looked more like jewelry than restraints. They clicked around each woman's wrist with a soft beep, the metal warming slightly against skin. "These will track your location, vital signs, and emotional states," Miranda explained with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "For your safety, of course. The cuffs are activated by your unique biometric signature, so please don't attempt to remove them. They're quite insistent about staying put." Rosie touched her cuff, feeling the subtle vibration against her pulse point. "What happens if we want to leave?" "Why would you want to leave? You're about to meet the most eligible alpha in America." It wasn't really an answer, but before Rosie could press further, the lights dimmed and the cameras started rolling. "Ladies," Miranda's voice took on that artificial reality TV brightness, "please welcome your alpha, Lucien Voss, Act 2, The Trap." If you've ever wondered what an apex predator looks like in a tuxedo, Lucien Voss was your answer. He entered barefoot, the first sign that this wasn't your typical dating show. With his jacket slung over one shoulder and his bow tie hanging loose around his throat. But it was his eyes that made every woman in the room go silent. Golden. Literally golden. Like molten metal and completely inhuman. "Good evening." His voice was exactly as rough as Rosie remembered from the videos. "I know this is unconventional, but nothing about my world is conventional. I'm not here to play games or put on a performance. I'm here to find my mate." The word mate hung in the air like a challenge. He moved through the group of women with predatory grace, making polite conversation that felt anything but polite. When he reached Rosie, she was absolutely certain he could hear her heart trying to escape through her ribcage. "And you are?" Rosie Lane." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I run a bakery. Or I did. It's complicated." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe? "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," she replied honestly. "You're shorter than the photo suggested." The other women gasped. "You don't insult the alpha on national television," except Lucien threw back his head and laughed. A real laugh that transformed his entire face. "Fair enough. What do you bake?" "Everything. Bread, pastries, cakes. I specialize in sourdough, though. I've got a starter that's older than my car." "What's its name?" "Herbert. Herbert the sourdough starter." Lucien's mouth quirked into what might have been a smile. "I like that. What else should I know about you, Rosie Lane?" The honest answer, that she was broke, desperate, and completely out of her depth, died on her lips. Instead, she found herself saying, "I'm not afraid of you." It was a lie. She was terrified. But something in his golden eyes made her want to be braver than she was. "No," he said quietly, and she caught the faintest hint of relief. "I don't think you are." That's when it happened, the thing that would change everything. Lucien took a deeper breath, probably unconscious, and froze. His nostrils flared slightly, his pupils dilated, and for just a moment, Rosie could have sworn she saw something wild and desperate flash across his features. Later, she would learn that she smelled like vanilla bean and yeast and something indefinably warm that made his wolf slam against the mental barriers he'd spent years building. She smelled like home, like safety, like everything he'd never known he needed. But in that moment, all she knew was that something had shifted between them, and the cameras had caught every second of it. The live chat exploded. The first rose ceremony was a formality. Of course, Lucien chose her for the first solo date. The real surprise was what that date entailed. "We're going hunting," he announced the next morning, and Rosie's blood turned to ice water. "Hunting? Not what you're thinking," Lucien said, and there was amusement in his voice. "I want to show you the territory, help you understand what this world really looks like." The hunt was actually a guided tour of packlands via ATV, with drone cameras following at a discreet distance. Lucien drove with the easy confidence of someone who'd been navigating these trails since childhood, pointing out landmarks and explaining pack hierarchy. "The caldera is the heart of our territory," he said, stopping at an overlook that made Rosie's breath catch. "The glass villa is new, built specifically for the show. Usually pack members live in the town below." Iron Ridge looked like something from a fairy tale. Wooden buildings nestled between the trees, smoke rising from chimneys, children playing in streets that had probably looked the same for 100 years. "It's beautiful," Rosie said honestly. "It's home." Lucien's voice carried a note of fierce pride. "My great-grandfather established this pack in 1923. We've been guardians of this land ever since." "What does that mean exactly?" "Being guardians? It means we protect what others would destroy. Wolves mate for life, Rosie. When we choose our territory, our pack, our mate, it's forever. There's no dating around, no trial periods, no easy exit." Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. "Is that why you're doing this show? Because you can't find someone willing to commit?" "I'm doing this show because the council thinks I'm broken," Lucien said bluntly. "My wolf has been problematic, aggressive. The theory is that finding a mate will fix the anger issues." "And what do you think?" "I think mate bonds aren't magical cure-alls, and I think reality TV is a terrible way to find forever." "Then why are you here?" Lucien was quiet for so long that Rosie thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I'm tired of being alone. And because if I don't prove I can control the wolf, the council will strip my alpha status and banish me from the only home I've ever known." The honesty in his words hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't a game for him. It was survival. That's when the rival pack attacked. Later, investigators would determine that the Crimson Fang pack had been monitoring the show's drone signals, waiting for an opportunity to strike at Iron Ridge's Alpha when he was vulnerable. What they found was Lucien and Rosie, alone except for camera equipment, miles from backup. The attack came without warning. 3 wolves, massive and snarling, launching themselves at the ATV. Lucien shifted mid-leap, his human form dissolving into something that was all teeth and fury and protective rage. Rosie had never seen a werewolf fight before. It was nothing like the movies. It was faster, more brutal, and absolutely terrifying. Lucien's wolf was a gray-black blur of violence, and when one of the attackers got too close to where Rosie had taken shelter behind the overturned ATV, the sound he made was pure nightmare fuel. The fight lasted maybe 3 minutes. When it was over, 2 rival wolves were limping back into the forest, and the third was very, very still. Lucien shifted back to human form, naked and bleeding from claw marks across his ribs. The expression on his face was pure devastation. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice broken. I'm so sorry you had to see that." But Rosie wasn't looking at him with fear or disgust. She was already moving, stripping off her jacket to press against his wounds, her hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. "Don't apologize for protecting me," she said firmly. "Are you okay? Do you need medical attention?" The look he gave her in that moment was something close to worship. That's when the storm hit. Mountain weather is unpredictable under the best circumstances, and these weren't the best circumstances. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in 10 minutes, and rain turned to sleet that made driving impossible. Emergency protocol kicked in. The drone cameras returned to base, and Lucien and Rosie were left to shelter in a survival cave that had been stocked for exactly this scenario. One cave, one thermal blanket, and absolutely no camera crew. "The feeds go dark after 10 p.m. anyway," Lucien explained as he used the emergency radio to contact the production team. "Union rules. We'll be fine until morning." Fine was a relative term. The cave was small, barely large enough for 2 people, and the thermal blanket was designed for 1. Outside, the storm raged with a fury that made the stone walls tremble. Inside, Rosie was trying not to think about how good Lucien smelled. He'd pulled on spare clothes from the survival kit, but the scent of his wolf still clung to him, wild and clean and utterly masculine. When he sat down beside her to share the blanket, she had to concentrate on breathing normally. "Tell me about Herbert," he said quietly. "Herbert? Your sourdough starter. How did you get into baking?" So she told him about her grandmother's recipes, about the meditation of kneading dough, about the magic of turning flour and water and time into something that could feed people's souls as well as their bodies. And he told her about pack life, about growing up with a dozen surrogate siblings, about learning to hunt before he could properly walk, about the weight of responsibility that came with being born to lead. Somewhere around midnight, when the storm was at its worst and the temperature in the cave had dropped to nearly freezing, Rosie noticed that Lucien was shivering. "Are you cold?" "I run warmer than humans usually," he said through chattering teeth. "But the adrenaline crash after shifting, it affects my temperature regulation." She didn't think about it. She just moved closer, pressing her warmth against his side. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Lucien went completely still, his breathing shallow, every muscle in his body taut with restraint. "Rosie," his voice was strangled. "You don't understand what your scent does to me." "What do you mean? You smell like..." He struggled for words. "Like quiet, like peace. My wolf has been raging for 3 years, and when you're close, it just stops." She tilted her head to look at him and found his golden eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that should have been frightening. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know," he whispered. "I've never felt anything like it." They were close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his irises, close enough that his breath ghosted across her lips when he spoke. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. And then his phone buzzed with a message from the production team. The spell was broken, and Lucien pulled away like he'd been burned. "We should get some sleep," he said roughly. "They'll be here to pick us up first thing in the morning." But neither of them slept much that night. The bonds tighten. If you've ever tried to leave a toxic relationship, you know that moment when you realize you can't. When you're standing at the door with your bags packed, and something, pride, fear, hope, desperation, keeps you from walking through it. Now imagine that something is a biometric cuff that will literally shock you unconscious if you try to leave. Rosie discovered this on day 14. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of group dates, cocktail parties, and carefully orchestrated romantic moments, all designed to create maximum drama for the cameras. 3 women had already been eliminated, and Rosie had somehow survived every rose ceremony despite being the least conventionally attractive contestant. The other women had theories about why. "He's just keeping her around for contrast," whispered Amber, a Instagram model with surgically enhanced everything. "You know, to make the real women look better." "I heard she's a producer plant," added Victoria, whose claim to fame was dating a vampire influencer. No way he'd actually choose the bakery girl. But Rosie had started to suspect the truth was more complicated than that. Every time Lucien looked at her, his pupils dilated. Every time she was near, his breathing changed. And every time they were alone together, which the producers made sure happened frequently, he watched her with the focused attention of a predator who'd found something worth hunting. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was intoxicating, which is probably why it took her 2 weeks to realize she was trapped. The realization came during a group date gone wrong. They were supposed to be having a romantic picnic in the forest, but Rosie had been feeling claustrophobic all morning. The constant cameras, the manufactured drama, the way the other women looked at her like she was an imposter. It was too much. She needed space. She needed to breathe. She needed to remember who she was before she became a character in someone else's story. So she walked toward the property line. The cuff started beeping when she was 50 yards from the boundary. A gentle chime, easily ignored. At 25 yards, the beeping became insistent. At 10 yards, her wrist began to tingle. At 5 yards, the world exploded in pain. The shock was brief but intense, sending her to her knees in the pine needles. When her vision cleared, the cuff display was flashing red with a message that made her blood run cold. Boundary violation detected. Oxytocin tether confirmed. Breach denied. Oxytocin tether, the bonding hormone. Her body was chemically attached to Lucien, and the cuff was programmed to recognize it. She couldn't leave, not unless he let her go. That night, she cornered Miranda Cross. "What the hell is an oxytocin tether?" Miranda's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Oh, that. It's a failsafe, really. Sometimes contestants form premature attachments, and we can't have them leaving before the story arc is complete." Story arc? This is my life. This is television, honey. And you're the best thing that's happened to our ratings in years. The audience is obsessed with you and Lucien. The hashtag #BakeTheAlpha is trending globally. I want out. Then convince him to claim you. Public mate bond declaration will override the cuff system. Miranda's expression turned predatory. Of course, that would mean you're his forever. Wolves mate for life, remember? So Rosie had a choice. Stay trapped in a glass cage for 90 days or become permanently bonded to a man she barely knew. Some choice. She tried to talk to Lucien about it the next day during their scheduled one-on-one time. They were sitting by the artificial waterfall the production team had installed, cameras discreetly hidden in the surrounding rocks. "The cuffs," she said without preamble, "they're not just monitoring devices." Lucien's jaw tightened. "I know." "You know? And you didn't tell me? Would it have changed anything?" "You signed the contract." "I didn't read the contract." Nobody reads 47 pages of legal jargon for a reality TV show. "You should have." His voice was flat, emotionless. "This isn't a game, Rosie. This was never a game." "Then what is it?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the artificial waterfall with an expression she couldn't read. "It's my last chance," he said finally. "The council gave me an ultimatum. Find a mate and prove I can control the wolf, or lose everything. My pack, my territory, my family, everything." "And what about what I want? What do you want?" It was a fair question. What did she want? 2 weeks ago, she would have said money and freedom. Now she wasn't sure. "I want a choice," she said. "I want to know that if I stay, it's because I chose to, not because some electronic leash is forcing me. Then I'll talk to the council, see if there's a way to override the system." But when Lucien met with the pack elders that evening, their answer was swift and final. "Absolutely not." "The ratings are through the roof," explained Elena Vasquez, the council's media liaison. "We're getting offers for international distribution, spin-offs, merchandising deals. This show is going to put shifter human relations on the map." "At what cost?" Lucien's voice was dangerously quiet. "She's not a prisoner. She's a contestant who signed a contract," another council member interjected. "The cuff system is for everyone's protection." "What if she leaves and sells her story to the tabloids? What if she exposes pack secrets?" "She wouldn't do that." "How do you know?" The answer stuck in Lucien's throat, because the truth was, he didn't know. Not really. He'd known Rosie for 2 weeks, and most of that had been under the artificial pressure of reality TV. But his wolf knew. His wolf was absolutely certain that this small, brave woman who smelled like vanilla and safety would never hurt their pack. The problem was explaining that to a council of skeptics who already thought he was unstable. So the cuffs stayed on, and the show went on, and Rosie began to realize that her only path to freedom led through the heart of a man who might be just as trapped as she was. Things came to a head during the infamous Heat Week episodes. See, the producers had a problem. They'd been expecting a traditional reality dating show structure: drama, eliminations, a clear progression toward a final choice. What they got instead was Lucien systematically terrifying every woman except Rosie into quitting. Not on purpose necessarily, but when you're a territorial alpha wolf who's found his potential mate, your patience for other women gets real thin, real fast. Amber lasted until day 23, when Lucien's response to her attempt at seduction was a low growl that made every camera operator in the room take a step back. Victoria made it to day 31 before Lucien's increasingly obvious preference for Rosie's company sent her into a spiral of dramatic tears and threats to expose this whole charade. By day 45, only 4 women remained: Rosie plus 3 others who were either extremely brave or extremely desperate for their 15 minutes of fame. That's when the producers unveiled their secret weapon, Heat Week. Due to the unique biological nature of our alpha, Miranda announced with barely contained glee, the final phase of competition will take place during the full moon, when shifter instincts are at their strongest. What she didn't announce, what the contestants discovered only when they were locked in the villa's spa wing, was that the rooms had been pumped full of pheromone enhancers designed to trigger shifter mating behaviors. It was psychological warfare disguised as a luxury spa experience. The effects on Lucien were immediate and dramatic. Within hours of the full moon rising, his careful control began to crack. His eyes stayed wolf gold, his movements became predatory, and the barely leashed violence that had been simmering under his surface for weeks began to show. The other contestants were terrified. Rosie wasn't. She found him on the spa's terrace at midnight, pacing like a caged animal, his hands clenched into fists that showed the tips of partially shifted claws. "You should be inside," he said without looking at her. "It's not safe." "Safe from what?" "From me." His voice was barely human, roughened by the wolf that was clawing at his restraint. "I can smell you, Rosie. I can hear your heartbeat, your breathing, the sound your clothes make when you move. I know you're 43 steps away, even when I'm not looking at you. Lucien, do you know what that means? What it feels like to be so aware of another person that their absence is physical pain?" He turned to face her then, and his eyes were pure wolf. "It means the mate bond is already forming whether we want it or not. It means my wolf considers you ours, and every instinct I have is screaming at me to claim you before someone else does." "What if I want to be claimed?" The words slipped out before she could stop them, and the effect on Lucien was electric. He went perfectly still, every muscle in his body coiled with tension. "Don't say things like that unless you mean them," he whispered. "What if I do mean them?" "Then God help us both." That's when Chelsea Winters, the last remaining Instagram model, made her move. She appeared in the terrace doorway wearing nothing but a silk robe in desperation, her voice artificially breathy as she called out, "Lucien? I was hoping we could talk privately." The change in Lucien was instantaneous and terrifying. His lip curled back from teeth that were too sharp. A sound emerged from his throat that was pure predator, and when he spoke, his voice carried the promise of violence. "Choose another throat before I choose yours for you." Chelsea fled. Rosie should have been afraid. Any rational person would have been afraid. Instead, she found herself stepping closer to this beautiful, dangerous man who looked like he was ready to tear the world apart to keep her safe. "That wasn't very nice," she said mildly. Lucien laughed, short and bitter. "I'm not a nice man, Rosie. I'm a predator who's been pretending to be civilized for the cameras. But the moon doesn't care about good television, and neither does my wolf." "What does your wolf want?" "You. Only you. Always you." His eyes searched her face desperately. "And that's not fair to you, because you didn't sign up for forever. You signed up for a paycheck. What if I've changed my mind? Have you?" It was the moment of truth, standing there in the moonlight, with cameras rolling and her future hanging in the balance. Rosie realized that somewhere between day 1 and day 45, she'd stopped thinking about the money. She'd stopped planning her exit strategy. She'd started imagining a life where she woke up every morning to golden eyes and the smell of pine forests. She'd started falling in love with the monster. "Yes," she said simply, "I have." Later, the footage of what happened next would break the internet. Lucien kissed her like a drowning man gasping for air, his hands tangling in her hair, his body pressing her back against the stone railing. And Rosie kissed him back with equal desperation, her fingers clutching at his shirt, her soft sounds of pleasure mixing with his rougher ones. The mate bond ignited like a struck match. It was visible on the night vision cameras, a silver light that seemed to flow between them, growing brighter as their connection deepened. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the light settled around them like a cocoon of starfire. The live chat exploded. Mate bond activated, Chakraja silver light, Masha, Rosie and Lucien, forever, Masha best reality TV moment. But the fairy tale moment didn't last long, because that's when the other shoe dropped. The choice. Here's what no one tells you about mate bonds. They're not magical fairy dust that solves all your problems. They're biological imperatives that can trap you just as surely as electronic cuffs. The morning after the bond ignited, Rosie woke up alone. She found Lucien in the villa's gym, beating the hell out of a heavy bag like it had personally wronged him. His knuckles were bloody, his shirt was soaked with sweat, and the expression on his face was pure self-loathing. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" He didn't stop hitting the bag. "Because I'm pretty sure I've fucked up your life enough for one reality TV show." "Lucien, you know what a mate bond means, right?" "You've done the research?" He finally turned to face her, and his eyes were human blue and filled with regret. "It means you can't leave. Not just because of the cuff, because of biology. Your body will crave mine. You'll be miserable apart from me. You'll never be able to love anyone else. Maybe I don't want to love anyone else. You say that now when you're high on bonding hormones. What about in 5 years? 10? When the novelty wears off and you realize you're stuck with a man who can't go 3 years without losing control of his wolf?" The pain in his voice was devastating, and Rosie realized that this beautiful, broken man had convinced himself he was unlovable. "What happened 3 years ago?" she asked quietly. Lucien's hand stilled on the punching bag. "What?" "Everyone keeps referencing this incident from 3 years ago. The thing that made the council question your control. What happened?" For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sank onto the gym bench and buried his face in his hands. "My fiancée left," he said simply. "Human woman. I thought we were happy, thought she understood what mating meant. Then she met someone else. Someone who could give her a normal life, normal kids, a normal future without the complications of pack politics and territorial disputes." "What did you do?" "I lost it. Completely. My wolf couldn't understand why our mate was leaving, couldn't process the rejection. I shifted in the middle of downtown Iron Ridge and went after the man she'd chosen." His voice was hollow with remembered shame. "It took 6 pack members to bring me down. 3 of them ended up in the hospital. But you didn't hurt her?" "Never. I could never hurt her, even when my wolf was in full rage mode. But I scared her. God, Rosie, you should have seen the look on her face. Pure terror. The woman I loved was afraid of me." Rosie moved closer, settling beside him on the bench. "That's not going to happen with us." "How can you know that?" "Because I'm not afraid of your wolf. I'm afraid of losing you." The honesty in her voice made him look up, and what she saw in his eyes was raw vulnerability. "The bond is real," she continued. "I can feel it. But it's not forcing me to love you, Lucien. It's just amplifying what was already there." "What was already there?" "The fact that you're kind to production assistants when you think no one is watching. The way you talk about your pack like they're family. How you've never once made me feel stupid or out of place, even though I clearly don't belong in this world." She touched his cheek gently. "The way you look at me like I'm something precious instead of something conquered." "You are precious," he whispered. Then stop trying to protect me from yourself and start trusting that I know what I want. It was a beautiful moment. It was also being broadcast live to 14 million viewers, including the Pack Council. The emergency meeting was called for that afternoon. The situation has become complicated, Elena Vasquez announced to the assembled council members, production team, and Lucien himself. Rosie had not been invited, which should have been his first warning. The mate bond activation was unexpected, Elena continued. Our supernatural biology consultants indicate it's genuine, not a temporary attraction or stress response, which presents us with a legal problem. What kind of legal problem? Lucien asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. According to shifter law, a true mate bond supersedes all other contracts and agreements. Ms. Lane now has the right to claim sanctuary within the pack, regardless of the show's parameters. That sounds like a good thing. It would be if the show were over, but we still have 45 days of filming left, and our network contracts specify a full 90-day arc. Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. Fortunately, there's a loophole. Of course there was. Shifter law also states that a mate bond must be formally acknowledged by both parties in front of pack witnesses to be legally binding. Until that happens, Miss Lane remains bound by her original contestant contract. You're saying the bond isn't real unless we have a ceremony? I'm saying the bond isn't legally recognized unless you have a ceremony. And if you have the ceremony now, the show ends. We lose 45 days of contracted content, and the network sues us for breach of contract. Lucien's wolf began to pace behind his ribs. What are you suggesting? Wait until the final episode. Have your claiming ceremony as the season finale. Maximum drama, maximum ratings, maximum profit for everyone involved. And if I refuse, Elena's expression turned cold, then Ms. Lane remains a contestant, subject to all the rules and eliminations of the game, including the possibility that you might choose someone else. I would never, of course not, but the audience doesn't know that. The tension, the uncertainty, the will they won't they drama, it's television gold. So Lucien faced an impossible choice. Claim his mate now and destroy the contracts that kept his pack financially stable, or wait 45 days and risk losing her to the manufactured drama of reality TV. He chose the pack. He always chose the pack. That decision would haunt him for the rest of the season, because the producers, armed with the knowledge that the mate bond was real but not legally binding, decided to push their luck. They brought in reinforcements. Ladies, Miranda announced to the 4 remaining contestants, we have a special surprise. Due to popular demand, we're adding new contestants to spice up the competition. The new contestants were 3 shifter women from neighboring packs, gorgeous, sophisticated, and utterly confident in their ability to win an alpha's heart. But we're already bonded, Rosie protested. Bonds can be broken, honey, Miranda replied with false sympathy, especially temporary ones. And until there's a claiming ceremony, everything is still up for grabs. The psychological warfare that followed was brutal. The new contestants knew exactly which buttons to push. They spoke Lucien's language literally and figuratively, understanding pack dynamics and shifter culture in ways that Rosie never could. They were everything she wasn't: confident, worldly, born to this life instead of stumbling into it, and they made sure she knew it. It's sweet that he's experimenting, said Sophia Chen, daughter of the Pacific Coast Pack Alpha, during a group date that felt more like a job interview. But eventually, he'll need a mate who can actually help him lead, someone who understands the political complexities. I heard human shifter bonds rarely last, added Marina Volkov, whose Russian accent made everything sound like a threat. The cultural differences are just too vast. Plus, there's the children question, said Isabella Santos with false concern. Hybrid pregnancies are so complicated, dangerous even. Each comment was designed to hit Rosie's insecurities, and they worked. By day 60, she was a mess of anxiety and self-doubt, questioning everything she thought she knew about her relationship with Lucien. The worst part was that Lucien couldn't openly reassure her without breaking the show's rules about influencing contestant behavior. He was forced to treat all 7 women as potential choices, even though his wolf was screaming at him to claim his actual mate and end the charade. The breaking point came during the overnight dates. In a cruel twist of reality TV logic, each of the final 7 women was invited to spend an unchaperoned night with Lucien in a romantic off-site location. The implication was clear. This was where physical intimacy would be tested, where the alpha would make his final evaluations. Rosie's date was scheduled for last. She had to watch 6 other women leave for their overnight dates, knowing that cameras were rolling, knowing that Lucien was contractually obligated to give each woman a fair chance, knowing that the mate bond between them was apparently not strong enough to override legal obligations. By the time her turn came, she was emotionally shattered. The location was a luxury cabin in the mountains, complete with hot tub, fireplace, and a bed covered in rose petals that the production team had scattered for maximum visual impact. "Hey," Lucien said softly when she arrived. He looked as exhausted as she felt. "Hey, yourself." She couldn't quite meet his eyes. "So, this is it. The big test. Rosie, did you sleep with them?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "The others. Did you?" "No." His answer was immediate and fierce. "Christ, no. I can barely stand to be in the same room with them when you exist." "Then why are we here? Why are we still playing this game when we both know how it ends?" "Because if I break contract now, the pack loses everything. The network will sue, the council will remove me as alpha, and you'll be trapped in a legal nightmare that could last years. And if we wait, we get our happily ever after with a massive payout that secures the pack's future for generations." It was a reasonable answer, a responsible answer, an answer that put duty and logic ahead of emotion. It was also the wrong answer. "Right," Rosie said quietly. "Well, when you put it like that, I guess 45 more days is nothing." But 45 days felt like forever when every day brought new challenges to their bond, new contestants designed to make her feel inadequate, new doubts about whether love was enough to bridge 2 completely different worlds. The final elimination was set for day 85. 3 women would remain, Rosie, Sophia, and Marina. The final week would be a series of challenges designed to test every aspect of their compatibility with the alpha: physical, emotional, intellectual, and cultural. Rosie was dreading it. She'd managed to survive this long on authenticity and the mate bond, but the challenges would expose every way she didn't fit into Lucien's world. She couldn't speak multiple languages like Sophia. She didn't have Marina's extensive knowledge of international pack politics. She was just a baker from Portland who'd gotten in over her head. That's when she made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting to be tested, she decided to test the system. The claiming, sometimes the only way to win a rigged game is to stop playing by the rules. Rosie's plan was simple, desperate, and completely unauthorized by the production team. On day 83, 2 days before the final elimination, she requested a private meeting with the pack council. "That's highly irregular," Elena Vasquez protested. "Contestants don't have direct access to pack leadership." "I'm not requesting access as a contestant," Rosie replied calmly. "I'm requesting it as Lucien's mate." "You're not legally his mate until there's a claiming ceremony." "Yes, I know. That's what I want to discuss." The council agreed to meet, probably out of curiosity more than anything else. What they found was a young woman who'd learned a lot about negotiation during her weeks in the pressure cooker of reality TV. "Here's what's going to happen," Rosie announced without preamble. "You're going to authorize an immediate claiming ceremony, or I'm going to walk out of here and hold a press conference that will destroy this show and possibly your pack's reputation." The council members exchanged glances. "Ms. Lane, you can't leave the territory. I can't cross the boundary, but I can stand right at the property line and live stream to my 3 million social media followers." Did you know I have 3 million followers now? The hashtag #BakeTheAlpha has been trending for 12 weeks straight. She was bluffing about the press conference, but the follower count was real. The show had made her an international celebrity. "What exactly would you tell these followers?" Elena asked carefully. "The truth. That you're holding me here against my will. That the romantic reality show is actually a psychological experiment designed to manipulate human shifter relations for profit. That the mate bond everyone's celebrating is being artificially prolonged for dramatic effect." Those are serious allegations. They're also true. and I have evidence. Rosie pulled out her phone, showing video clips she'd been secretly recording. Conversations about manipulating eliminations, discussions of contract loopholes, plans to introduce more contestants specifically to cause me emotional distress. The room went very quiet. "What do you want?" Elena asked finally. "A choice. Real choice, not manufactured drama. Either let me go, remove the cuff, void the contract, let me walk away freely, or let us complete the mate bond now, tonight, with no cameras and no audience. And if we refuse, then tomorrow morning, the world learns that Iron Ridge Pack is holding humans prisoner for entertainment." It was a nuclear option, and everyone in the room knew it. The council went into emergency session for 3 hours. When they emerged, Elena's expression was carefully neutral. "We've reached a decision. The claiming ceremony will take place tonight, witnessed by the council, with no production crew present. However, there's a condition." "What condition?" "You must choose. Leave now, freely and forever, or stay and accept a permanent mate bond with all the responsibilities that entails. No trial period, no changing your mind. If you choose the bond, you choose this life, this pack, this world, forever." It was the choice Rosie had been fighting for from the beginning. So why was she suddenly terrified? "How long do I have to decide?" "1 hour." She found Lucien in the villa's garden, sitting alone by the koi pond. He looked up when she approached, and she could see in his eyes that he already knew. "They told you?" "They told me." His voice was carefully controlled. "They also told me what you're risking by forcing this choice." "What am I risking?" "If you leave, you'll never see me again. The bond will fade eventually, but it'll be painful. If you stay." He took a shaky breath. "If you stay, you're giving up any chance of a normal human life. No career in the human world, no friends who'll understand your choices, no escape from pack politics and supernatural drama. What do you want me to choose?" "I want you to choose what makes you happy." "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is." He stood, moving closer, but not quite touching her. "For 3 years, I've been making decisions based on duty, responsibility, what other people needed from me. I became the alpha my pack required, not the man I wanted to be, and it nearly destroyed me." "Lucien, I love you, Rosie. Not because of the mate bond, not because the cameras made us a fairy tale, but because you see me, the real me, not the performance. You're not afraid of my wolf, you're not intimidated by my responsibilities, and you call me on my bullshit when I need to hear it." Tears were running down her face now. But I won't trap you in my world the way I was trapped in this show. If you want to leave, I'll find a way to make the council let you go. Clean break, no consequences. And if I want to stay, then we do this right. No cameras, no audience, no manufactured drama. Just us, making a choice about forever." The hour passed in the space of a heartbeat. When the council reconvened, Rosie stood before them with Lucien beside her, her hand clasped firmly in his. "I've made my decision," she announced. "And I choose him. I choose this. I choose forever." The claiming ceremony was nothing like the elaborate spectacle the show had planned for the finale. It took place in the pack's sacred grove, witnessed by the council and a handful of Lucien's closest family members. There were no cameras, no audience, no dramatic music, just 2 people speaking words that would bind them for life. "I claim you as my mate," Lucien said, his voice steady and sure. "In the eyes of the pack, before the moon, until the end of all things." "I claim you as my mate," Rosie replied, meaning every word. "In the eyes of the pack, before the moon, until the end of all things." When they kissed, the mate bond flared to brilliant life, visible even without cameras to capture it. The cuff around Rosie's wrist clicked open and fell to the forest floor. She was free, and she had chosen captivity. But this time, it was a captivity of love, not contract. The show aired anyway, of course. 90 days of footage doesn't just disappear because the ending changed. The network aired every episode, complete with a finale that showed the empty villa and a simple title card. Lucien and Rosie chose each other, off camera, and declined to participate in the finale. The ratings were astronomical. Bake the Alpha trended for months. Fan fiction flourished. Marriage proposals at reality TV premieres became a thing. But the real story happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Rosie learned to navigate pack politics with the same determination she'd once applied to perfecting her sourdough recipe. She opened a bakery in Iron Ridge Town that became a gathering place for both humans and shifters. Lucien learned that being an alpha didn't mean being perfect. It meant being honest about your flaws and trusting your pack to help you be better. They had their first child 18 months later, a daughter whose first word was cookie and who shifted into a tiny wolf pup before she could walk. The cuff became a symbol, not of imprisonment, but of the choice to stay when leaving would be easier. Rosie wore it as a bracelet on her wedding day, transformed from a restraint into a reminder. And sometimes, late at night when the pack was asleep and the moon was dark, she'd touch the silver band and remember the girl who'd signed up for easy money and found something far more valuable. She'd found home. She'd found love. She'd found herself. And sometimes, that's worth more than all the reality TV drama in the world. The end. But every fairy tale needs a sequel. Because 18 months after the most famous reality TV wedding in history, Rosie Lane Voss received another contract in the mail. This one wasn't for a dating show. It was for a parenting show. And the fine print mentioned something about hybrid children and generational pack bonds and the next evolution of supernatural reality TV. Some contracts, it seems, never really end. They just get more complicated.